You should have your portfolio out and open to page 80, and you should have something to write with. So we're doing building concepts, and we're going to develop an understanding about the word environment. So I want you to go ahead and repeat the word environment. Say it again, environment. And don't worry, nobody else around you can hear you. They all have their headphones on. Now, in this example sentence here, it says, as an environmentalist, I'm concerned about litter on the street, as well as the impact of fossil fuels on the environment in general. It's kind of a long sentence, so let's kind of break it down. First off, I want you to underline litter on the street. So if that is an example of something that damages the environment, what does that tell us about the meaning of the word environment? If there's litter all over the place, then this has to give us a hint to what environment means. And it probably means something along the lines of all over the place. So before we get to the definition of environment, let's try to think of some synonyms. Now remember, a synonym is a word that means the same thing as environment. We're not really sure what environment means yet, but let's see if we can come up with some synonyms that would fit into this sentence right here. So an everyday synonym is one that's more casual, one that you might use out on the playground, right? So if I'm concerned about litter on the street, as well as the impact of fossil fuels on the environment in general, another word that might mean the same thing could be the word nature, right? That would fit in here. I'm concerned about litter on the street, as well as the impact of fossil fuels on nature in general, right? It has to do with the surroundings, right? And let's think of a precise word, one that's more specific and academic. Right? If I'm concerned about the environment, I could also be concerned about the air quality. Air quality in Paris isn't always that good. There's smog in the air. All right? That's the environment I live in. I want you to come up with your own everyday word that means the same thing as environment. So look at these two words, and I'll give you one more precise word, climate. Climate has something to do with the weather or the atmosphere. So if environment means nature, air quality, and climate, then what's another word that means the same thing as environment? So after you've written that down, let's go over here to the word family. The word family are different forms of the word environment. So first off, we have the word environment. So repeat it after me. Environment. Environment. Environmental. Environmental. Environmentalist. Environmentalist. So if environment means something along the lines of nature or air quality, environmental is an adjective that describes the place, nature, what's going on around you. And an environmentalist, whenever you see the IST, that means it's a person, right? So a noun is a person, place, or thing. It must be a person that's really concerned with nature or the air quality. Notice here in the example sentence it says, as an environmentalist or a person concerned with nature, I'm concerned about litter on the street, as well as the impact of fossil fuels on the air quality or on the climate in general. Let's go down to the box that goes over the meaning of it. So here's the meaning of the word environment. It is the natural surroundings of living things, such as the air, land, or sea. So if your word here had something to do with air, land, or sea, or natural surroundings, that would be correct. So let's come over here to essential characteristics. What essential characteristics mean is that these things are vital or very important to the word environment. You can't have the word environment without having these things in mind. So, for example, it supports life. People always talk about the environment are always talking about how we can support life. We want to live longer on this earth. We want to support life around us. That's talking about the environment. Or everything in our particular area. Let's talk about the environment of Mr. Massio's classroom. That's the particular area we're talking about. How is Mr. Massio's environment? Or how is Penicate's environment? All right, that's everything in a particular area. Now let's come up with some examples that have to do with the word environment. So coming down to the examples box, it gives us the first one, breathing air. All right, so breathing air has to do with the environment around us, air. All right, remember, surroundings of living things such as the air, land, or sea. Also, it connects with the essential characteristics listed here. Breathing air supports life. You can't live without breathing air. All right, so here is another example of environment. Right? Protecting the Earth's rivers, lakes, and oceans. That has to do with the environment. There are people who are trying to protect the Earth's rivers, lakes, and oceans, which has to do with land or sea, and also supports life in the rivers, lakes, and oceans. All right? So I want you to come up with your own third example of something that has to do with the environment. Make sure it connects to at least one of the two essential characteristics. You're talking about something that's supporting life or that supports life, or you're talking about your example has to do with everything in a particular area. Something along the lines of your surroundings or the trees in my neighborhood. All right, so come up with your own example here of something that has to do with the environment. So now that we have the examples here, let's go ahead and look at non-examples. All right, a good non-example is the internet. The internet doesn't support life. No matter how much you may argue it, I can't live without the internet. People lived without the internet long before you came around and needed the internet. Okay, people have never lived without breathing air. Got it? Internet is non-essential. It doesn't support life. Therefore, you don't really need it. All right. So here's another example of a non-example. Right? Airplanes, and cars. All right, these are non-examples. These don't have to do with environment. Right? The pollution they cause might affect the environment, but they themselves don't have anything to do with the environment. Because remember, they don't support life. They're very useful, but we can live without them. Right? And everything in a particular area where, airplanes and cars, they're really found everywhere, unlike rivers, lakes, and oceans, which are just, you have to go to a lake. Cars and airplanes, they move all over the place. But a river is part of the environment. Lakes is a part of the environment that they're in, same with oceans. All right, so these are two non-examples, and they do seem to be kind of tech heavy. They're technology based. So it looks like technology is a non-example for environment. Now I want you to come up with your third non-example, something that doesn't have to do with the environment, all right? Something that doesn't have to do with the natural surroundings of living things, such as air, land, or sea. And it will probably have something to do with technology. So now let's move on to the final section of this video, the write about it section. So we talked about the meaning of environment, gave some examples, some non-examples. So you're going to fill out these two sentences. This one says, the environment I live in contains many blank and blank. All right, so it looks like they're both going to be two nouns. Remember, a noun is a thing. All right, could also be a person. All right, so the environment I live in contains many, it could be trees and large apartment buildings. All right, what are two things that are in the environment that you live? Are there many rocks and houses? Are there many people and cars? If you live in the city, maybe you live way out in the country and it contains many cows and llamas. All right, so go ahead and fill in these blanks with two things or two nouns that are around the environment that you live in. So now let's move on to the final sentence. This one says, I can care for the environment by blank and blank. So these blanks, they're not going to be nouns, right? Because if you put a noun there, it wouldn't make any sense. You're going to use a verb, which is an action, like jump, but you're going to add an ing at the end of it, so jumping. Right? But of course, you can't care for the environment by jumping. All right? So what is something that you can do that would be caring for the environment? An example might be cleaning up litter where the trees grow, or making sure everyone in my household recycles. All right? Both of those examples use a verb plus ing, cleaning or making sure everyone in my household recycles. So how can you care for the environment? So take a moment and fill in these blanks, and when you're done, make sure you read it out loud so it makes sense.